All right, what is going on, everyone? And welcome back to the Mets Weekly Podcast as we are live at this very moment on YouTube and on X to discuss the latest news and rumors all off season long in Mets land. But before we get into that, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel for weekly episodes of our show, such as this one, that are recorded live right here on the YouTube channel at Monday night, typically at 7 p.m. We started a little bit late today, but things happen. For those of you watching or listening on playback and you want to join the conversation in the future, make sure to turn on those post notifications to know when we go live, as well as multiple videos that we like to put out throughout the week, all off season long. For those of you in the live chat right now, we love reading your comments, your questions, your concerns, and all of that, of your instant thoughts about this team. And if you feel like you're being ignored, you're not being ignored. You're just being starred throughout the show. We will try to pull up as many as we can to keep the flow of the conversation going. Some may be saved for viewer questions towards the end of the show, so stay tuned for that. Following us on X and on TikTok is the best way to know when we do go live and when content is coming out. And for our audio listeners, make sure to follow us on all of your favorite listening platforms to not miss the audio version of new episodes that go up at 9 a.m. the following day that these are recorded. So without further ado, let's get into episode number 109. Frank is not here today, which means I am joined by my other co-host as well. Andrew, welcome back. Welcome back to the scene. Our third mic being upgraded to second mic today. How you doing? What's going on? Not much movement in the Mets land, but tons of rumors coming out to freak everyone out.
Yeah, another week of the beginning of January, end of December stage of just ghostness in Major League Baseball. Again, we saw a few moves happen right before the show starts, but nothing in the Mets perspective, at least interest-wise, those couple guys with Lorenzen going back to KC, and then for some reason, Gavin Lux going to Cincinnati because, God forbid, Cincinnati needed more infielders. But from the Mets side, again, we're just kind of a stalemate with our, face of the franchise that some say. And, if that doesn't go to plan, what are the pivot plans? Even though people are saying, oh, there are no options, there are. But again, the best case scenario is, let's say, bring him back on that short-term AAV, and then we'll figure out that we also did get that really nice passing report, which added some things that we thought, oh, they were just going to add an outfielder and either a corner guy and a couple of relievers. Maybe the Mets are adding another reliever, not named Roki Sasaki, which we'll get into a little bit later.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of wide books that are open right now, and it may seem like it's being slow, but also the rest of the offseason seems to be slow as well. And I really do think that the pace is going to eventually pick up, and you're going to start to have some of this news sprinkled in and out. It seems like as of right now, when it comes to the not just the Mets or the MLB offseason, it just seems like everything is just being sprinkled out, and things are just coming out like in chunks, basically. Because we saw a trade today for Gavin Lux, and then a minute later you get a Michael Lorenzen signing to the
going back to
Royals.
Kansas City,
Michael Wacha also went back to Kansas City, so they have two Michaels now.
Yeah.
But I think that it just goes like at a very weird pace. It has a lot of spikes when it comes to that, and it's just very, very it's just very, very weird when these things come through. And you're all really just like waiting for something to drop, and then three other things drop. It's just such a weird pace that this offseason is. I feel like they do need to make a little bit of changes to it, maybe a few deadlines in terms of some things when it comes to the MLB offseason. But here we are right now. This is how it is. And you did say, we did get a report from Jeff Passan that I don't think we're going to go into fully, but we will, address parts of it. throughout the entire show, but he is saying that the Mets are still talking about adding another outfielder and relievers and a starter. The winter of Soto is still cooking. Those are the exact words of Jeff Passan from ESPN via the article that he just put out on ESPN Plus. We're seeing some screenshots on Twitter. So for those of you who want to see the screenshots of that, of all the information he put out there, go out to Twitter. If you do not have an ESPN Plus subscription, again, I probably shouldn't have said that because that's a crime. But again, when it comes to everything going on in Mets land, we know that the main source of it is obviously going to continue to be Pete Alonso until something gets resolved in this regard. And I think that, the conversation that we continue to have on him, we're pretty much repeating ourselves at this point. I feel like reporters are repeating themselves. I feel like fans are repeating themselves. I feel like everybody is just sitting at the edge of their seat, probably expected for this to get done on the Mets' favor, but it's just a constant waiting game. And that's the type of feel that makes us feel like maybe Alonso is just holding up this complete offseason for the Mets. Maybe he's holding it up for multiple teams who are in on him or in on other players that maybe are dominoes that fall right after him. And I feel like when you look at some of the reports, as I will pull them up again, do our diligence here, it's pretty much the same that we have really much heard recently. And of note, we're just pretty much waiting the inevitable. And as for, all these other reports that we got, including what Jeff Passan said in his article and what he has been saying these last few weeks, saying at this point, Pete Alonso will almost certainly get an opt-out laden type of short-term deal. Barring another team stepping up, the expectation is that Pete Alonso and the Mets will reunite. It just happens to be when it's going to happen. We also got some other comments earlier this week from other insiders. Robert Murray on his podcast, The Baseball Insiders, make sure to go check it out if you have not already, saying there is a gap in the negotiations, which we all know. It mostly stems with the years. Maybe you can end up seeing a solution with a short-term contract with high AAV. You can look at some of these other teams as well. But when it's all said and done, I think Alonso goes back to the Mets. It's just taking longer than both sides would really prefer. And I feel like that's just the feeling that we have all really had from the outside, that we don't know what's happening behind closed doors. Ken Rosenthal also kind of rephrased that as well, saying the same thing. You're going to hear about other teams, the Angels, the Giants, whatever. I don't know if any of those are that real. I've said it since July, and I still mean it. Pete Alonso should be a New York Met. He said that on the Foul Territory podcast a few days ago, that being Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic. So it's pretty much the exact same things that we've continued to reiterate and rephrase, maybe with different levels of aggressiveness. I think that at this point, we're at that stage of where the Mets are kind of in the driver's seat now, and Pete Alonso and Scott Boras, or whoever is running the show here, most likely it is Scott Boras and Pete Alonso right now. They're slowly starting to realize that they're not going to get a better offer or a long-term offer somewhere else. Andrew, I know that you have put your head into the fire when talking about Pete Alonso these last few weeks, because we've had, some backlash, I would say, because, Pete Alonso, I get it. It's a homegrown guy. People feel strongly about him. But again, in sense of reality, we're here to tell you like it is. Is there anything that is that you would like to establish anymore before we get into what we really do want to do in the concept of this topic? Because I feel like we're just repeating ourselves over and over and over again.
Yeah, again, we keep saying it again, and we continue to blow up the teams that Boras. We made fun of the teams. Boras was like, "Oh, these are the teams," and ended up, "Oh, look, they're all going different directions." Again, and then we got a little rumor that we didn't talk about on the last show of, the Angels, and yeah, they are the definition of doing stupid shit. So hey, giving Pete Alonso an 8-year deal for $290 million, I wouldn't be surprising, but I would hope, and again, that's the difference between Artie Moreno, that, he just uses his brain cells and says, hey, we got Nolan Shanuel, and we don't need another DH after getting Jorge Soler. Let's not go get another, one position DH. Then we already have a major league caliber player, Nolan Shanuel. Who isn't the worst
pretty
player?
Much what Mazy is saying here. Yeah, pretty much. Angels have a current first baseman, and San Francisco have the top first base prospect named Bryce Eldridge. Will those teams spend on Pete when they have cost-effective options? Exactly. That's what I mean. Continue.
But yeah, so again, like for me, I'm not going to open up no cans of worms because, God, Pete Alonso bleeds that orange and blue blood, and I won't say anything, and I'm not going to say that if we make a trade with a certain team for a certain starting pitcher, they couldn't take that money and sign Pete Alonso. But again, that's not our discussion. So again, I still think, we said the inevitable is just waiting for Scott Boras to realize there's no market, and again, he's going to come back and take a Bellinger type deal, maybe a 3 or 4 year with the opt outs, and then maybe the Mets on their plan are targeting the better version of the first baseman. But you need to have a stopgap, and why not have a guy as a 30 homer stopgap for 1 more year? It's not a terrible idea.
Yeah, I mean, as for some other branch out conversations, I do want to get into the chat for a second. Aaron coming in here saying, "What up, fellas? What up to you?" Saying,
"Why'd you say it like
how
that?
Do you feel? I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh my
hey,
god,
dude, I got the beanie. All right, that's my style now. All right.
Oh god.
Anyways, back to reality. Saying, how do you feel about Yandy Diaz as a potential stopgap if Pete leaves and the Mets try to sign Guerrero next year? I think that it's definitely in the crosshairs of Vlad Guerrero Jr. It all really has to do with the concept of where the Blue Jays are at. It's really hard to know to time it perfectly because there could be a possibility where Pete Alonso ends up going elsewhere and maybe Vlad Guerrero Jr. signs an extension. And you just never know if you can time that correctly, and then you're putting yourself in a really tough position. When it comes to Yandy Diaz, I think that if you were to trade for somebody like him, I think that it's more of just a stopgap. I think that Yandy Diaz is a lot better of a hitter than people give him credit for. Maybe it's more of just the development from what you get from the Rays of how they are able to maximize their hitters. But I do think that Yandy Diaz is a really solid option for first base for maybe multiple years. And maybe you kind of look at it on the timeline of Ryan Clifford, who I don't think is in the timeline at this current moment. I don't think he's considered a factor in this Pete Alonso discussion. But when it comes to Yandy Diaz, I think that he's a little bit more of a long-term than people think he is, just to be as a stopgap. So I think that if they were to trade for him, I don't think he is going to be a rental. I don't think that he would be someone who they're just going to look for 1 year. I don't know how many years he has left on his contract. Is it 2 years, Yandy Diaz? I'm pretty sure he has 2 years of control.
Give me a sec. I just saw Martino tweeted or said something that was interesting. I was listening to it, but besides, I'll look up the annual.
Okay. We'll get to it. Just give me a second. Yandy Diaz. I'm pretty sure he has. No, he has a 2026 club option. Most likely, they would end up picking that up if they were to take him. And I don't see the Mets just making a trade for just a straight up rental just to get somebody else the next year. Even though it is a team friendly deal, it will definitely cost less than what Alonso is going to cost. But Andrew, what do you think about the possibility of Yandy Diaz? Is that something that you would put in the cards there? Guerrero being in that timeline. I don't know. I just feel like it's a little bit rough of a chain reaction to just like kind of put your chips into that when you just don't know how the Blue Jays are just going to spend stupid money and what department they're going to put it in.
Yeah, I mean, again, Toronto, another thing on this podcast that I'm, a great fan of the Toronto organization and the city of Toronto. But again, Yanni's an option. Again, it's a flyer, like you said, it's a team option for the next year, so you get him for a couple of years if need be. But also, it's a benefit. Again, it gives you the ability if he can't translate, because that's been the problem with Yandy. He hits the ball hard, but a lot of it's on the ground. So you haven't been able
Yeah.
to see him elevate the baseball. So do you really want to pull that into a scenario, which maybe there is some if he's bad, at least you can get out of the $12 million option and you still have the ability without really losing a big hit to a 34-year-old Yandy Diaz. I mean, it's an idea. Tampa Bay, is always willing and wanting to shed money. So it's an interesting idea. What would it cost? Again, maybe a mid-level prospect. Again, maybe in like
Yeah.
like in the Blade Tidwell level of pitching prospects. Tampa Bay's always looking for pitching. So maybe a Tidwell for Yandy swap. Maybe if they're interested
Yeah.
in Brett Beatty, that could be like a sweetener just to take on, because they love their reclamation projects. That Tampa does. So I mean, he's definitely an option. Is he amazing? No, but again, especially how fast this market has shriveled up, you have to look like, if you're going to keep Mark Vientos at third, he's an interesting option. He also used to play third more. Now he's strictly kind of a first baseman. So it's
Yeah.
an idea. If you can have Tampa just the straight salary dump in Tampa's case, it's a great idea because you have that financial flexibility. But it's just an interesting idea. And he's also older. So again, is that something Stearns would want,
Yeah.
another older first base who's 3 years older than Alonso right now? And then you maybe getting him for age 34. I don't see it as a fit
Yeah.
for what
I don't
Stearns
see
has
it happening.
built.
No.
But again, it's a name that fans are going to bring up. And again, it's Tampa Bay, always willing to shed money.
Yeah. Again, I just don't see the thought process in it. It's not like I don't think Yandy Diaz would be a good replacement for Pete Alonso, because I think that he is a solid player. Had a little bit of a down year last year. But overall, if you're looking at it in terms of the skill and the overall tools he has at the plate, definitely a lot more applicable than what we've gotten from Alonso these last 2 seasons. Not saying he's the better option, but I'm just saying that I think that it's definitely a good value option. But at the age of 33 that he's going to be coming into, I just don't see the Mets putting their chips into that basket. And, Mets fans can beg all they want. I don't see them trading for a first baseman that is older. And to be honest, if that was one of the main ideas to trade for somebody like Yandy Diaz, I feel like with what the assets you would give up compared to a compensation pick and then also a mid-round prospect or whatever, like a mid-level prospect, they probably would have gone into the direction of Christian Walker if that was the case. But they did not end up doing that. Christian Walker went to the Astros. So that is pretty much a sunk reality. As for another comment that I do want to get into with Alonso, I'm trying to figure out where it is. Yeah. Brad saying it's all pointing to Pete and the Mets coming together, but Santander is a must on a short year, high AAV. I mean, we talked about Anthony Santander 2 episodes ago about him being a perfect fit for this lineup. I 100% agree that they should do that. I don't think that the Mets are as deep in that market. I think they've shown interest, but I think that they're looking a little bit more in the direction of like a Jesse Winker or another guy that we will talk about in a second. But continuing on with Pete, like I said, we're just going to continue to repeat ourselves of what the situation is. Pete Alonso's running out of options. The Mets need a first baseman. He's not going to get a big offer going into his 30s, long term. And I feel like we kind of have gone a little bit sour in terms of what has been happening with Alonso, mainly because of what has been voluntarily been looked at from the eyes of Alonso recently. We know we talked about him rejecting the 7-year, $158 million that was like before the trade deadline in 2023, before the sell-off that they offered to him. He rejects that. Then he hires Boris the next offseason, the corresponding offseason, and he's looking for a bigger deal. We also had rumors that were confirmed later on after we went live, actually, last week, that the 3 years, $90 million was actually true, that he was offered that, and he rejected it. So when it comes to that 3 years, $90 million, I think that it's more directing in between, the 3 years or 7 years that was offered that probably will end up getting the deal done, because we all know he's going to lose money from that 7 years, $158 million, 100%, unless, again, like we've seen some of these reports, unless a team out of left field comes in and tosses 200 million his way. Most likely he's not going to get that long-term deal. Most likely he's not going to get over 110, 112 million, 120 million. Now, last episode, about before it was confirmed a rumor, I said this: 3 years, 90 million. Let's say that's on the table. Maybe I'd make another offer. Maybe I would, where you lower the AAV and make it a 4-year deal. Maybe I would do that. If you're cooperative with me, if you're nice to me, maybe I'd do that. Exactly. And when I said that, it got me thinking as to what would that offer look like? What would that possible offer be if I were to make one more offer? 3 years, 90 million. Now, for those of you who are watching live, watching on playback, watching in a video clip, watching anywhere, and you want to tell me that it's not my money to spend, no fucking shit. I know that. Hypothetically, if I was in the GM office, how would I give a final offer to Pete Alonso? Now, I put this offer, a first draft of this offer, on Twitter earlier this week. Most of you agreed with it. Most of you would say that you would do it. I did a little bit of a revision on it, and you guys, for those of you who do follow me on Twitter, you probably would know what that revision would be. But this is what I would give Pete Alonso as the final offer that I would give to him to get this thing done. And if he does not want that, have fun, Pete Alonso. Good luck getting that somewhere else. So here is my take it or leave it offer for Pete Alonso. 4 years, $106 million. 2025, he is making $24 million. 2026, he gets a $1.5 million raise. Once again, he gets a $1.5 million raise in 2027. In 2028, he gets another $1.5 million raise and the same exact value as 2028. In 2029, he gets a vesting option of that same value for a 5th year vesting option. Now, that 2029 vesting option would become a fully guaranteed with 25 homers and 145 games played. That willing, again, we've seen Alonso do that before, but again, this would be in a 33-year-old season, so you never know if there's a decline or not. Now, up to a possible total of $135 million, that would be ranked in total contract value 45th overall, which I think we all can admit that Pete Alonso is a top 50 player in the major leagues, and he would be ranked he would be ranked the first overall in total value. He would be ranked 3rd overall. That's a typo. 3rd overall in total value among first basemen. This would be a $26.5 million average annual value. That would be the 27th highest average annual value among all MLB players. He would be ranked the highest first baseman rank AAV among all active first basemen by 500K, in front of Freddie Freeman. We know he's not Freddie Freeman. We know he's not Matt Olson. Personally, looking at this offer, 4 years, $106 million, it could be up to $135 million. Andrew, I'm going to go over to you of what you think about this offer. If I were looking at this from the outside, and I think you can agree with me, I am being really, really generous. Very, very generous. I feel like this is an offer that he can't refuse. And if he does, personally, I think that there's something wrong with him at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think the AAV is fine. I just think you have the option in the wrong spot. If he's signing again the 4-year deal like we would expect, he's gonna want the option after this year. I like the idea again. I understand the idea. What you're trying to do is this is what you would put down, and that's again, it's a AAV wise, like you said, it's perfectly indicted. It's an overpay to an extent, but
Yes.
if he is willing to take the shorter term deal, the option isn't going to come out at the last half of the year, the contract. It's going like how Ant's saying in the chat. It's going to happen after 2025. And I think the Mets, if they are taking that short-term AAV, they
I mean,
want that option after the
I
fifth
had that
first year.
thought, but then we also made that point last week. I'm pretty sure it was you or it was Frank. I'm not sure. Why would he want to test the market when he's behind Naylor and Vlad? Like, that probably would be even stupider.
I mean,
I
yes,
mean,
yeah, I think I said it, but even to the extent that, again, let's say, and he's in a lineup now with Juan Soto, and let's say they add another bat. In his mind, he's still thinking, okay, he had a bad year. We all said he had a bad year last year, and the market's not testing him. What if he has, with Juan Soto either hitting in front of him or behind him, he goes back, hits 47 homers, and goes
yeah.
back over 120? That's what Boris and them are going to play. So I think even like I said, I would think it'd be a mistake to go back on the market. I'm not Scott Boras, and what Scott Boras is going to play is say, hey, you have Soto there now. You expect them to add another bat, and maybe they add another bat at the trade deadline, and if needed, or an Alvarez breakout hitting behind him, that he's going to get more production. And if he has a higher productive and goes back over that 125 RBIs, hits over 40 homers, maybe, and we don't care about the batting, and an OPS back over 850 to 900, he's going to test the market and say, you know what, it gives him the ability, or at least this is what Boras is going to tell Pete. One, you have
Would
the
he
security.
reject that backloaded money though? Like, that's the thing. I feel like he would want that backloaded money going into the mid of his 30s. Like, it makes sense to me that he would.
Yes, and I just don't think, again, he wants this short-term deal, and I think the only way he takes this type of short-term deal is he has the ability to test again. That's just how,
Yeah.
we've seen it with Boris clients every year they do this. So again, I like the idea, and an option for the Mets on the back, I guess, is the vesting option. So it's all based, obviously, on
Yes.
Pete's performance. But I think any option later, or at least a way to get out of the deal, it helps the team, not the player. So if the player is going to want the option, they're going to want it at the beginning of the contract to say, hey, it gives them the benefit of, okay, I bet on myself last year. I had a bad year, even though it was still serviceable. If I can come back this year, go back to being my a couple years ago self, maybe I can get a bigger deal with maybe a 6-year deal with somewhere else after this year, after a great year. So again, I just don't think, and especially how Boris guys are, it makes sense. I know the contract and the idea makes sense. I just don't think with Boris's type and how Boris structures his deals and how he works with his clients, even with Vlad and Naylor coming out next year, I still think he'd be like, okay, you can have a better year than Josh Naylor. So again, and he is better than Josh Naylor. So again, he'd just be the second best first baseman instead of the best. But again, it's just a wait and see. I think the player option for him in the first year, Boris would be like, okay, let's just play this game. Say, all right, you give it. At least you would give some financial flexibility, like you have the back-loaded deal. So hey, he goes out this. Let's say he has another bad year this year. Okay, at least I'll say I'm not going to opt out and have those 4 years like he has the structure here, and he still gets his money, not to maybe the length he wants, but he still at least covers himself with that backloaded deal, with at least the ability for him to get back on the market.
Well, yeah, I mean, I understand that in that way, but I just feel like the way that this is lining up, it just makes sense that, the last year would be guaranteed. And I feel like, the 3-year talk about it, the talk of the 7-year deal that he rejected, meeting that nice in the middle there of like 4 and then maybe a potential 5 years. I feel like that's probably something that gets it done on this type of market. Mark is coming in here basically giving the idea of the first baseman rankings of, I guess he's saying, I don't know if he's saying their salaries or not. For those of you who think I'm referring to, I don't know if he's ranking them or something. I'm not sure what he's going by, but when it comes to the overall of like actual salaries, I am counting Freeman as the highest paid first baseman because Bryce Harper was given that contract to be a right fielder. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it. Chris Bryant as well, I believe, is already considered a first baseman, but he was given that to be a third baseman, left fielder. So that's kind of the give that I'm putting out there of the overall market. Now, a lot of people in here saying that Aaron saying this is a very fair deal. Easy saying if he doesn't take a 4-year deal like that, then fuck him. Yeah, I mean that's what I mean. Like this is the take it or leave it deal that I would put out here. Something that he can't refuse. But if he wants to, again, this is another good point. I am being overly generous. Like I said, doing that little, you meant a lot for us for 6 years, like adding that a little bit. Again, I feel like I'm being very, very fair here. And if he ends up not taking something like this, then I don't even know what to say anymore. Like that's where I'm like, okay, Pete, good luck finding that somewhere else. 4 years, 112 is also putting out from Kenneth. You never know. I just feel like it's really hard to turn down. Like, let's say if they put an offer like this in front of him, I feel like it's really hard to turn down backloaded money when you're a first baseman. Like, I don't think there's anybody stupid enough to do that, right?
Well,
if there is somebody stupid enough, it would be. Never mind.
I didn't
That's
say
offensive.
it. Yeah, I didn't say it this time.
He's saying these rankings are Ryan Finkelstein. I think this is Locked On Mets, correct?
Yeah.
His piece about where Alonso ranks among top first basemen. Okay, so that overall ranking, I would not put Walker. I mean, overall upside, I wouldn't put Walker ahead of him, but Walker has been better. He was better than him this year. Yes, I would put Olsen over him. I put Vlad over him. Harper, obviously, considering he's in that first base position. Freeman is there as well. Older guys like Rizzo and Goldschmidt are kind of out of that conversation now. Yeah. But, I did ask everybody on Twitter about if they would do that type of deal, and I'm trying to go back to it. I believe it was over 60% saying that they would do it. There was a small amount that said it was an underpay, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. Some said it was an overpay, and there were a few that said, I'm not making any more offers to him. He can walk. So, I mean, as for splitting it up again, I think that, this is the type of offer that you would just establish that, yeah, I mean, this is it, Pete. I mean, if you're going to continue to surf the market here, I really don't think that we're willing to be as patient, as it is being expected to be going into the later stages of January to February, and then pitchers and catchers reporting. Like, I feel like at one point they're going to have to cut this thing off if something's not going to work. I don't think that they're going to drag this thing out to spring training if they can't get a deal done. I feel like the Mets eventually, David Stearns is like, okay, well, tick-tock here. Let's try to move this thing along. Let's end this staring contest because I got the rest of the offseason to go by. I mean, I've made 3 moves in the last 4 weeks. There hasn't really been much stuff that they have done recently. So I feel like holding this up in this way, I don't know. I think that that's kind of the thought of where, I don't know. I really think that, right, it's coming towards the end here. Like at one point, they're going to have to cut it off and be like, okay, it's either you take it or leave it or not. And I feel like that offer is really, really generous. When Richard coming in here saying too many people are still emotionally attached to Pete, I agree. I 100% agree. I think that, the thought of the fact that he's homegrown, the fact that he's been here for 6 years, that should not be a main factor as to why they bring him back. And when you do things based off of emotion, when you do things based off of that, it's not something that, continues to sustain success. There has to be a price limit. Again, I have never been one to just be to just completely cut it off there. I feel like everybody has a price that I would bring them back on. But when it comes to Alonso, there are some signs of this possibly going south. And like I said, the main reason as to why, of all the aspects involved, because I feel like a lot of people forget details and they kind of just get lost in the past of he won 2 home run derbies and he hit 53 home runs in 2019. Like, that's cool and all, but that's not what we're looking for going forward because of a sustainable team you're trying to look at. So when it comes to Alonso, with all those factors involved, that contract that I just put up, 4 years, $106 million, that could possibly be $135 million with a vesting option, I feel like I'm being very, very generous at the trajectory that we are going. Again, that's just kind of how I feel. You can flip-flop Walker and Alonso. Yeah, again, I don't know. Walker, again, durability is another thing that is put out there. Philip coming in saying he's going to get a Bellinger type deal, take or leave it. That could possibly happen. But in terms of overall value, we know that Bellinger provides a little bit more from all tools compared to somebody like Pete Alonso. So maybe it'll be a little bit less in that regard. The 3-year, $90 million. What was that compared to the deal? What was the deal that Bellinger got last offseason?
$78 million. He got, I think it was 24, 27, and 28 were the years, ABs.
Yeah. Okay.
Something like that.
So that makes sense. So that would be a lot more. So again, that's even more generous. That's like the homegrown tax that you're getting, to keep your player. And again, he still rejected it. So I don't know what to really say at the end of the day. At one point they're going to have to cut this thing off. And the way that, that goes into that point, Jay-Z coming in here again, like, the one that's married to Beyonce or was married to Beyonce. I don't even know. Are they still together? I don't know. Let us know, Jay-Z, if you're still together. When is the point where the Mets should completely pivot away from Alonso? What if he goes unsigned during spring training? It could happen. We've seen better players than Alonso overall go unsigned.
I think you're disrespecting. I think you're disrespecting Pete Alonso a little bit. How are you saying there's better? I've never heard of a better player better than Pete Alonso. What are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Come on.
No, come on. I mean, anyways, we've seen more valuable players, I guess, in overall tools. Matt Chapman, again. Matt Chapman went unsigned for a long time.
Harper
pitchers,
Machado
Blake
went in.
Snell,
Yeah.
Blake
Go back
Snell,
to Harper Machado,
that whole thing that got held up. But I mean, I don't know when it is the point that they pivot away from him, because it's probably just going to be one of those, okay, there's an offer on the table. If you get something better, we're not giving you anything else. But, I don't think that they're going to go up to him and say, well, there's an offer on the table forever. Like, that offer is going to be there forever, because we've seen them take it away many, many times. Again, in the first instance, 7 years, $158 million that he rejected 2 years ago before the 2024 offseason began, before the trade deadline, before all of that happened. Again, David Stearns wasn't here when that happened. Billy Epler offered that to him. So he's not going to get anything near that, even if you cut the year again, where it's 6 years and 130 million, 6 years, 130 million, something like that, cutting off roughly. Maybe it's 132, something like that, doing math in my head. But again, there could be a cutoff. We don't know what it's going to be, because it's very, very predictable. I'd say that we've seen half and half of the impression that David Stearns has on Pete Alonso. Like, we don't know if he's attached to him. We don't know if he's not. He's talked well on him, obviously, with him being in the organization. We've heard some of these reports, from, I'm pretty sure Andy Martino said it, that, like, we're not trading Pete Alonso after when Billy Epler was still here. He said we should explore Pete Alonso trades, and Stearns completely shut it down. That was a story there that a possibility of his future with the team. So is it possible that maybe that was just more of a wait and see thing for him to put everything in place? Maybe, but we just don't know where the cutoff is going to be. Now, when it comes to the overall cutoff of me being the nicest I could possibly be, when I say, if I were the Mets, this, take it or leave it. And if not, good luck finding an offer somewhere else. And to be honest, I would not blame the Mets if after the 3 years, $90 million that he presumably rejected, I would not blame the Mets if they don't give him another offer. I would not blame him if that was their last offer and they have that on the table and that's it. I would not blame them given the circumstances of Pete Alonso. Again, it's all the matter of fact as the Mets value Pete Alonso more than any other team out there. And it's known that they do. And I would make that offer in kind of the flex to that, like in kind of the rhythm to that of where maybe you add something a little bit extra because of what he's been here for 6 years. But it's really, really hard to really just, I don't know, keep going at this when you still have other things to address in the offseason. We'll get into those other things that they could possibly do this offseason in addition to bringing back Pete Alonso, because bringing in Pete Alonso to protect Juan Soto, personally, I don't think that is enough to keep this lineup deep enough, especially when you have two guys who I'd love to offload this offseason in this lineup, but that's a different conversation. Richard Zerker also saying I believe he's been on the possibility of, he's more of on letting Pete Alonso walk, which again, if you want him to walk, that's, again, everyone's entitled to that opinion. It's whatever. Personally, I don't really care which direction that it goes because I know that there is going to be a strong pivot. But he's saying that the Mets would get a draft pick from letting him go. And again, that is one of the benefits. Again, that could be something that they do in that regard. But you just never know. And I think that there also are some learning lessons from him possibly going unsigned as long as he does. This is another good point from Marcus saying that if Pete does not have a full spring training, that's a very bad thing. And also a ready-made excuse for if they sign him and he sucks this season. That's another point. I mean, let's not forget how much it took for them to get JD Martinez in here. Again, they waited it out until the end of spring training. He didn't come here until the end of April, didn't get going until June. Then he kind of just fizzled out after June. But when it comes to Jordan Montgomery, he had a abysmal season waiting out. Again, he's a pitcher, different type of ramp up for those types of guys. Blake Snell struggled to start it off, but then ended it off again. Ended it off really, really solid. And again, got that big year from the Dodgers this offseason. He was actually one of the first guys to sign, which is actually pretty ironic compared to last offseason. But when it comes to the overall impression of what happens with Pete Alonso, again, I think that once it does get it to a point where it's like, okay, let's say you're at February. That's when I feel like you close the door on this. I feel like that, you close it. Let's say if there's not a resolution in, let's say, 3 or 4 weeks, that's when I feel like that's it. That's when I feel like you close it, because I don't know about signing him this late, close to spring training, because it may affect something. It may. I mean, I don't know if that's a factor that you think of where the cutoff should be, but I think that that's also something that needs to be given some thought, where we've seen guys sign very late into spring training and not perform as well as you expect them for giving them that type of investment.
Yeah, again, this whole process, again, I guess my deadline is February 1st. Like, right, I mean, if the latest would be the Super Bowl, like, again, pitchers and catchers report. But again, at this point, anything before, like, the Super Bowl, obviously, is going to be the last date, February 8th. Like that's because pitchers and
Yeah.
catchers are reporting this year. I believe it's February 18th. Because there's an early,
Yeah, it's
obviously, you had
getting
the
earlier
early
and
start.
earlier. Yeah.
Because we got the Korean games with the Dodgers. I think the Cubs are playing early, so I know they go up and they play those regular season games earlier in the spring or in mid March. But again, for me, I think pitchers definitely are different than position players. Even though we saw Bellinger when he signed his, and he got hurt, right? He got an oblique, or I think it was a hamstring, which again happens when you're not properly adjusted to a spring training. So for me, I'm not going anything. Again, February 8th will be the last day. And I think this again is going
Yeah.
to be the rest of this month of just this who's going to blink first. But again, and we've seen and heard and everything else that the Mets aren't waiting for him. Like they're still actively doing other things, which again, that's how a good organization does. Yes, you want Pete Alonso back and you want this protection for Juan Soto, but yet you still have to not be left with your pants down. And then that they're still going out and looking at other options and not done adding. So even Alonso drops, I still think definitely how David Stearns acts, he'll have a pivot because we've seen it every time where something happens, then he goes to his pivot. And of course, one of my favorite relievers, of course, just signs a contract right as we're streaming. Great.
Yeah, Chris Martin going to the Texas Rangers on a 1-year
1 year
deal.
deal.
I believe he's like 800 years old, so I think we'll live.
I mean, he doesn't walk
You never
anybody.
know.
We don't like walks.
Yeah. Jay-Z saying if the Mets didn't if Pete did in fact turn down 3 years, 90 million, then he needs a mental evaluation. Listen, I think that I'm being nice here and, being someone who's saying, let's give him another offer just for the sake of it. But again, there has to be a cutoff. We've talked about this before. We can't continue to put the offseason in one basket, because if we look to see what happens with Pete and this thing continues to drag out as much as it has, again, there's still other things they have to do this offseason, and there has been things that they have been more evaluating, towards the rest of the offseason. I do want to get into that of, other pieces that they may be looking at on the free agent market, aside from somebody like Pete Alonso. And I do want to talk about this a little bit quicker since we haven't really heard many reports about it, but we've seen this player be linked to Pete Alonso being linked to the Mets before, previous off seasons as well. And I feel like this is a piece that is falling under the radar in the outfield market, or the corner bat outfield market, maybe the DH market if you're a little bit creative, and that being Jurickson Profar, kind of hiding behind that potential of Teoscar Hernandez or Anthony Santander. But as for Jurickson Profar, we know that he came off of a career year, and to overall profile what he has done, I do want to pop this thing up. We know that he's a well-disciplined hitter offensively, and he has been a corner outfielder that is not good offensively, but when it comes to the overall results that he has gotten, we know that he was a former top prospect, kind of came into his own a little bit later, coming over to the Padres in his first stint, but last year he had a career year. He was a starter in the All-Star game, I believe. We all know the overall percentiles. He hits the ball hard, makes great quality of contact, which is in the top 10%. Top 10% as well in chase rate and whiff rate. Does not strike out a lot. Knows how to put the ball in play. Good situational hitter. He's a switch hitter. And it seemed like as a right-handed hitter, he hit for a little bit more power from that side, but also was able to get a little bit more extra base hits from that side, but also did well as a left-handed hitter. So that's something that would fit into the model of the Mets needing a left-handed hitter, but probably not much power from that side. Last year, 24 home runs, 53 extra base hits, slashing 280, 380, 459. Full season was completely healthy, 668 plate appearances, 139 weighted runs created plus. Now, the only I wouldn't say red flag, but coincidence, I'd say, throughout his entire career is that bottom line we have on the graphic there is when he's with the Padres, career 113 OPS plus, a 8.2 wins above replacement. Then you look at the rest of his career with the Rangers, the Athletics, and the Rockies, which is more of a sector of his career, an 81 OPS plus and a .2 wins above replacement. Obviously, he provides other tools, not really at an elite level, but he definitely can be versatile. We've seen him play the infield earlier in his career. We saw him play the outfield. We know that overall he can give you, some types of Swiss Army knife types of tools throughout his game. But there is a little bit where you look at it from Profar as a Padre, maybe him outside of the Padres organization. We know that the Padres have seen a lot of hitters and a lot of players underperform in their days. To see him overperform like this in San Diego, I think that I don't think it's a weird option. I think it is a interesting option that I think would have a solid fit given the concerns you have with maybe Brandon Nimmo in left field, of where you can give him a day off. He's not the number one guy I would put in the DH position, but he's definitely, a bat that could do a lot of damage at face value. Andrew, what do you think about the possibility of Jurickson Profar? I know we've talked about him seldomly a little bit throughout ever since, I think, multiple years now. The Mets have been linked to him before, but I think there's different ways you could look at it. It wouldn't be my first choice, but I think that it would be a solid addition if they were to pull it off.
Yeah, I mean, Profar, like you said, he's been linked for us for a couple of years now. But again, like you said, we'll start again with that obvious seems to be red flag is if he's not playing at Petco Park, which isn't a hitter's friendly paradise, he ain't doing it. He couldn't even go to Colorado and be a productive baseball player. So for that being a red flag. Two, for me, it doesn't fit what this team needs. If this was Profar earlier in his career when he was playing second, he was playing shortstop, when he was more athletic, sure, you can use him as that like kind of Swiss Army knife, like you said, being able to play. Last year, he was only playing left field, DH, or first base. Like, I don't need another one of these guys on this roster that is clogging up positions that we have a lot of guys, corner outfielders and first baseman or, DH types. And then, like we said, there's better options for what we want as a DH type. But again, if Brandon Nimmo's plantar fasciitis is a massive concern, you're going to need another, I wouldn't say defensive first out because you've got Tyrone Taylor and Jose Siri on the roster already, but maybe another guy where maybe Nimmo needs to take some more games at DH. So you would need another guy that you can trust out there who is a better bat than a guy like Tyrone Taylor or Jose Siri. Again, for me, I don't see I don't see a fit. I mean, yes, you can say you can find a fit. I think it's easier to find better quality of hitter. I think bat first mentality should be here because, again, like I said, with Taylor and Siri on the roster, you already have two guys that can, rotate around playing left and center. If you're going to move Soto to DH, you have a couple of those guys. And obviously, if Brandon Nimmo is healthy, he's fine in the corners. So for me, I would prioritize just a one strictly DH, but the Mets don't seem to just want to get one DH. And again, obviously, Santander being the best option. But again, he is better than Jesse Winker because he gives you a switch hitting ability, which you like to have another switch hitter lower in the lineup. And he's been pesky in big moments, obviously, against the Mets. He has great numbers, and obviously in the postseason in 2023. But throughout his playoff, he's had some decent moments in this postseason career. So, I mean, if they signed him, I wouldn't be ecstatic. I'd be like, okay, again, he'd at least give you another productive bat. Again, he's just not like his early form where I can say, okay, he can play a little second base, play a little short, like Kike Hernandez, who you can just literally throw anywhere. Yes, he's not great defensively, some of the conditions you can play him there. Again, if this was earlier in his career, I think I'd be a lot more willing to do it. But I think just because now he's only strictly playing left field, DH or first base. I think the Mets have a lot of guys, and there are better versions of those types of guys on the free agent market as a switch hitter, so that I think they should prioritize. But again, if you said tomorrow Passan puts out a tweet, the Mets sign Profar, it's fine. It gives you some depth, emergency, because we love just in case of emergencies for Nimmo if that foot is really bothering him. So again, it's fine. I just think there are better options on the market that they should prioritize.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing with this market. I don't know if he's looking at DH money. Profar, he probably is looking for outfield money after the year that he just had, and I feel like he's going to want to cash in that regard. I think that Profar is definitely a fit to the profile of somebody like David Stearns, someone who doesn't chase, someone who puts the ball in play, a good situational hitter, can pop a few for you as well from the pull side, from both sides of the plate as well. Again, I think that the only thing that would be a positive fully for me, bringing somebody in like Jurickson Profar, I think that pretty much just makes an official stance that Starling Marte is going to get traded, or Starling Marte will not be on the team. That's the main thing that I am really, really good with. It means bye-bye Winker as well, so maybe it's something that does get cut off in that way. With Winker being the disciplined hitter that he is, I think that it can definitely be replaced in that production with a guy like Jesse Winker, with a guy like Jurickson Profar on that free agent market, because he is a well-disciplined hitter. So you never know what the look from, let's say, I don't know, the view of David Stearns saying that he wants maybe just one of these switch hitters that can also give you some outfield flexibility or give you some positional flexibility, as compared to somebody like, Jesse Winker, who is one of the worst defenders in the game, and then also looking at it from the view of JD Martinez. The thing is that compared to Winker, I think Profar is definitely going to be a little bit more expensive in that regard, and I don't think that they're going to, bring him out here just to be a DH and an emergency left fielder. Like, I feel like if you want an emergency left fielder and you want to just kind of go into that market with the right amount of value, it makes a lot more sense just to re-sign Jesse Winker and bring him back, if that makes sense. But overall versatility as an offensive guy, I think he is an offensive weapon at his best, but pretty much all of his best has been with one team, which is so weird, to be honest. And like you said, Colorado being the offensive, launch pad that it is, and him having one of the worst, if not the worst, year of his career there, it definitely shows a little bit more of red flags. I don't know if there was injury history there, but it seems like he's been relatively healthy recently. I know that he was banged up a decent amount in 2021. He had a little bit of an injury history, but he's been relatively healthy. We all know he was banged up forever in Texas.
Yeah.
But going into his 30s, I think it is a good fit. It's just not the direction I would go in. And Jay-Z saying, if you can count on a 115 to 120 weighted runs created plus from Profar, that would be great, but it does seem a little risky. And that's the thing. It's like you could get that 115 to 120 bat from him, and it would be very productive because he can give you a lot of contact and power from both sides and put the ball in play and not, give up damage opportunities like some EDHs we have had in the past. But when it comes to, Profar in that sense, we've only really seen him do it with San Diego, which is really, really odd. But when it comes to the overall look of other bats on the free agent market, I don't want to go in, too specific on Profar, because I don't think that the Mets are as linked to him as compared to somebody like Jesse Winker, as to somebody like maybe, Kike Hernandez, maybe he is out there and they're attached to him, maybe. Obviously giving the leeway for some of the young guys to come in. If you were to look at the projections, straight off of projections, let's say he does this with the Mets at a 32-year-old season. When it comes to, the free, the free range of the steamer projections that are coming in, which I will talk about steamer projections later. Let's say that if you were to able to do this in over 650 plate appearances, he were to slash 258, 349, 408 with a 116 weighted runs created plus, give you 18 homers from that left field type of DH production. I would prefer more of a 30 to 40 type of home run bat at that DH, of course, but there's not really many of them out there. So as it continues to limit in regards to somebody like Santander that they probably would not want to pay for in that regard, I think that if you were to get something like that from him, from more of putting the ball in play, but I do think that, when it comes to, the overall options of Jesse Winker, I think it's a lot more smart to kind of look at the extra bat as Jesse Winker and not Jurickson Profar, who is more of a red flag out of San Diego than compared to, just as an overall bat that could be the DH option, if that makes sense. I don't know if there's anything else that you want to add on this topic, because it's just, again, it's a fit in like very weird ways. I think it makes the lineup better, but I feel like there are better options for the thought process, if that makes sense.
Yeah, again, like you said, I think there are better options. I think it also just depends on how Stearns wants to build the rest of this lineup out. Is he looking for? We keep clamoring for the thumper. Maybe he's not a thumper. Maybe again he's just trying to find these 120 bats and have a lineup full of 120 bats. I mean, that's a productive lineup. I mean, God forbid you had 9 guys with a 120 WRC plus. Yeah, it's a pretty good damn lineup. But again, it just depends how Stearns wants it, and again, how much of an insurance. And again, as we get closer and closer to spring training, prices go down. So again, if they're opportunistic and get them on a heavy laden 1-year deal, sure. Again, there's never a bad thing. I just think I think Kansas City Royals make a hell of a lot more sense. But again, are they willing to spend that money again for a second straight year? I think there are teams that fit better, Pirates as well, who again, you don't know if they're going to spend the money, but definitely need Profar more, and they'd see him on that team would be a higher priority than just, he would be the 5 or 6 hole hitter for this team.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. Probably the Padres are looking to retain him. You never know. One other thing that I feel like that would make it a little bit better, the overall protection for the bottom part of the lineup. That we've seen a lot of the chasing that has happened from the righty standpoint. You're going to get a lot of that from Jose Siri from the bottom of the lineup. You'll get a decent amount of that from somebody like Tyrone Taylor from the bottom of the lineup. So for that to be a little bit protected to get to the top of the lineup with somebody like Profar, that probably would be something that can benefit this lineup as a fit. Obviously, I don't think that he has a fit on this team defensively right now, unless you're looking at, preserving the health of Brandon Nimmo, which I feel like has already been something that they've thought about recently, especially with moving him to left field last offseason, bringing in somebody like Harrison Bader, trading for a guy like Tyrone Taylor. I mean, you just never know. Obviously, looking in the outfield market, I think that they're going a little bit more bat heavy in that regard. But I would say that a guy like Jurickson Profar, a guy like Anthony Santander as well, pretty much takes Marte out of the equation, which is something that I personally want. I know there's still people who believe that he has value, but again, we're talking about a Starling Marte that is 36 years old. We're talking about a Starling Marte that is so much banged up and so removed from that 2022 All-Star selection that he had 2 years ago. easy coming in is that Profar produced in San Diego because their lineup is better than lineups in Oakland and Colorado. Yes and no, I would say. I would say it's yes and no, because I do think there are competitive ABs that you get from a guy like Jurickson Profar no matter what, but you just really have not had the greatest results. If you were to look at his last few seasons or just overall plus, just from a plus bat standpoint, because again, he's not a he's not a shit wrecking bat in that regard compared to somebody like Anthony Santander, who also is a switch hitter on this market. 2018, a 107 bat. 2019, a 90 bat. 2020, which if you count it or not, 113. 87 in 2021, 110 in 2022, 78 in 2023, and then last year 139, which was a career year for him. So again, it's not really a guarantee. I still do like the bat upside from somebody like Jurickson Profar on maybe a short-term deal, like 2 years, something like that. But he probably is looking to cash in. He really is probably looking to cash in. I think that there's only a few teams that are willing to give him that type of money. Padres being one of them, maybe if they cut some costs there of, maybe the Dylan Cease trade gets done this offseason and they have a little bit of money to clear up and give, let's say, 3 years, $40 million to somebody like Jurickson Profar. Maybe. You never know. If he's looking for term, you never know. Let Marte DH and keep him away from playing the outfield. That will take the stress off of his knee and we'll get more out of him. I don't want to see Marte in the DH position. I just don't want to see it. We have been very avid into the way that we just don't want to see Starling Marte be in that conversation for the designated hitter. The designated hitter needs to provide some pop, and he has not hit a home run since the middle of June, I think. I'm pretty sure if Frank is in the chat or watching live, let us know. I'm pretty sure he has that information on taps. And I'm pretty sure he had, like, in that span from when he did not have a home run, he had like 4 extra base hits. So again, for a guy to hit singles against left-handed pitching and get paid $20 million, we've said this so many times, it makes absolutely no sense. And I feel like with 1 year left on his deal to cover part of that contract, they got to move him. I do think that they have to move him. Do I think that he's going to get moved? Who knows? We know that we've heard reports of that possibly happening, but when it comes to them looking at other bats or other outfield bats on the market, it does tell me that they're looking to make Marte an expandable piece on this roster, and hopefully that comes to fruition. I don't know if it does, but we'll see what happens. But as for overall talent and overall greatness, such as Jurickson Profar, let's move on to one of the big discussions that has been going on this offseason recently, since he was posted on a very special case, of course, with him being a kind of a international pool money type of signing. So it's all about relatively his choice, and that being Roki Sasaki. We've talked about him multiple times before, sprinkled it in and out of the Mets rotation, and how it seems like recently the only guy that they're willing to bring in for this rotation is somebody like Roki Sasaki, who would be a cost controllable type of piece, a special case, of course, but you get him on the cheap. Incredible upside. We know a fastball that can touch over 100 miles an hour, disgusting breaking stuff, 23 years old. I mean, it's just the perfect sweet spot type of guy that you could possibly have land into your lap. But there are other guys, other teams that are in that market, and that's pretty much the reality of the situation, where I think that, you have these other teams in there where he has to make his decision, and it's not really has much to do, obviously, with money, of course, because it's all really more of the situation of what he wants to develop his big league career into, because it's not like he's just going to sign a 1-year deal and then go right back to Japan the next year. Like, he's going to be looking for a deal that, maybe he gets a very rich contract in free agency, like 5 years from here or 4 years from there. We'll see what happens in that sort of contract. But as for the overall market of what we have heard recently, there's 2 quotes that I want to put out here because we seem like we are been spinning in circles with this of the possible teams that he could be attached to. The Mets are one of them. We don't know what is going on, and it seems like that has been the full-on take from somebody like Ken Rosenthal on Foul Territory, who said straight up, saying, I don't know where this is going. I don't know where this is going to end up. And anyone who tells you otherwise is kidding themselves. But it seems like the Dodgers, the Mets, the Yankees, the Padres, and the Rangers, those are the obvious front runners based on simply the fact that they have met with Sasaki and the other teams have not. But he also gave a little bit of a timeline saying that you should expect this sweepstakes or this overall signing period to end between January 15th and the 23rd. It could be announced in that range. We know that January 15th is the deadline for these international players to sign. There also has been, some talk of the Mets signing a international shortstop, who I believe is the second highest ranked international prospect, that being Ilian Pena, who we don't know if it will affect their overall international signing pool. You never know. But also we did get some stuff about Joel Wolf, who is the agent of Roki Sasaki, and he told Alden Gonzalez, who is from ESPN, saying that he has more long-term that as for Roki Sasaki, he does have more of a long-term global view of things, and he does believe that Roki is very interested in the pitching development and how a team is going to help him get better, both in the near future and over the course of his career. He didn't seem overly concerned about whether a team had Japanese players or on the team or not, which in the past, when represented Japanese players was sometimes an issue, that was never a topic of discussion. It seems like there hasn't been much of a factor with Roki Sasaki of geography. It's possible that maybe it does be one of the tiebreakers. Who knows? We don't know what's going on in his head of what his thought is. Overall pitching development, we've heard a report from Jim Bowden a month ago, him saying that he was very impressed with how Jeremy Hefner develops pitchers. We've talked about Jeremy Hefner before, not really in that way. If you want to know what we're talking about, go back to our previous episodes of the lore of Mets Weekly. But when it comes to the overall thought of Roki Sasaki, there have been things that have been pointed out that maybe it doesn't put the Dodgers at hand or put the Dodgers at advantage. Maybe it doesn't put, San Diego at advantage, with Yu Darvish being someone who has a connection to Roki Sasaki, who, apparently he idolized growing up. The Dodgers, we did get a report earlier today, and nobody really knows, where this is going to come from. But per Brandon Gomes, who is the GM of the Dodgers, is that the second meeting that they had with Sasaki, apparently there is some doubts about their ability to sign him. I don't know how much that is true. I don't know if people are just bullshitting. Maybe it's a smoke screen because we've seen the Dodgers swoop in before. But the feel of Roki Sasaki, the Mets possibly with him obviously would have a better rotation, so much better upside in this rotation. I do want to talk about the upside of this rotation even without Sasaki. But I know, Andrew, you weren't here for the last time that we discussed more in depth of Roki Sasaki. So, your feeling on this whole sweepstakes, do you think that there's any real change? Do you think that it's just basically Dodgers or Padres and the Mets maybe are a close third? It's a little bit different because it's not like Yamamoto, who was coming off of a full-length career in Japan, and he was looking for a huge deal. It's not really it's not a money situation, which probably would leave the Mets at a little bit more of an advantage, but also the Dodgers just deferring the money that they do. But I mean, what is your thought with the overall, concept of Roki Sasaki? How much of a smokescreen do you believe? I mean, there's so many different angles you can go at it because it's such a rare thing with an international player just coming off of international signing money, not getting a complete career overseas.
I don't think, again, especially like in this canary, there really is no smoke screens. Again, you know what the price tag's going to be: $7 million. That's the most this guy's making. So I don't believe there are smoke screens in a negotiation. If this was a Yamamoto type, I think that was definitely a more feasible thing. I don't think you can, again, we know what the money he's going to make. So we've seen we've seen chaos with the two teams that we thought were the two favorites of San Diego and, their ownership dispute and how, what's going on with the widow of Peter Seidler and the team. And then obviously you see Brendan Gomes saying, hey, we're not getting a second meeting, when that, again, just kind of being flown under the radar as usual, because God forbid we put the Dodgers in a bad light. But again, I've always felt like, again, like I said in the Soto sweepstakes, I thought it was the Mets were the end all be all of money, and this not being a money situation doesn't put in the favor of the Mets. But if we believe he likes Jeremy Hefner in the pitching development. I mean, if he is actually, and if again we see, he's more in the long term, then again, and I even saw this with the Dodgers developing, and I think that's becoming a host. I think they can develop relievers. I think that's a guarantee. The pitching development in the starting rotation, Bobby Miller has been god-awful, and he was supposed to be the next, generational talent, which we were feared. Fuck Bobby Miller, by the way. Like, Landon Knack's fine. He's a reliever in the postseason run. Tony Gonsolin isn't all that. Dustin May can't stay healthy. So, like...
Yeah, exactly. That's another thing.
The overrating...
That's another thing I would look at, to be honest. They've had a lot of pitchers get hurt recently. So that's probably something in the development of a young player like Roki Sasaki, who's had some injury problems these last few years. I mean, it's possible that maybe they look at it from a different angle, and maybe that's where that under doubt type of thing came from, Brandon Gomes in this article that just dropped. For those of you who want to see it, it's on sportskita.com. And it was linked on Twitter by Baseball's Greatest Moments. I'll actually retweet it on my Twitter. For those of you, go follow me, and you can see it of that article regarding Roki Sasaki. It'll be the first thing on my Twitter timeline at MW Cars. It's right below my talking head right here. Anyways, I mean, again, I don't know if there's any type of turmoil on the end of the Dodgers, because, again, they just seem to be the favored team for everyone. And Aaron's saying, basically, I'm so sick of the Dodgers getting everyone that they want. And listen, I think that that's pretty much the trajectory right now as to, the Dodgers, most likely they will be in the mix for everyone. Their name is going to be attached to them because of the success that they have had, because of the star power that they have. And the Mets will be attached to that too, as well, because of the money that they have with Steve Cohen. Now, Mark is coming in saying maybe Sasaki will favorably sway towards the Mets if he likes this pitching lab. Again, I don't know. It hasn't really been in the light as much of what this pitching lab is. We've heard about it. We've heard some stuff about it. We've heard some information, but it hasn't really come to light as much. So we don't know what is public. We don't know what is the situation with that, because it's just kind of starting up with the Mets. It's kind of just starting up into that way of developing pitchers. It's not in that level. The Mets aren't in that level of what the Dodgers have been able to do with relievers, or what the Rays are able to do, or what the Astros have been able to do, what the Brewers were even able to do when they were there under David Stearns. So it's not really at the level there. Maybe there is a look from Sasaki that he's like, oh, well, David Stearns did this in Milwaukee. Maybe he does it with the Mets. Again, personally, I don't think I have my doubts with this signing, of course, because I feel like we've seen him connected to the Dodgers and the Padres way too much. If I were to get into the mind of a 23-year-old kid, which that would be like a month from now, I will be 23 years old. So I guess this is the great perspective, because me and Roki Sasaki, again, we're both tremendous athletes and throw 100 miles an hour. But when it comes to Sasaki, I don't know if there is a 23-year-old kid looking at Jeremy Hefner's success rate as a pitching coach and licking his chops. Like, I just don't see it from the outside here. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there is a thought of Jeremy Hefner that's a little bit bigger than what we have of him, but we've also seen some things that he's left out to dry as well. So who knows? Again, I don't know what the opinion is. It seems like there's a lot of executives that think highly of Jeremy Hefner. David Stearns apparently seems to be one of them. So maybe all of those connecting the dots go into play here. But I think the Mets will be considered one of the teams. Will they be that final team? I really, really don't know. If we're talking about the overall organization and the direction that they are going, I'd say that the Mets are probably the best situation from the reports that we are hearing. Things could change. Who knows? But with the overall doubts from the Dodgers, maybe it is the health of the pitchers that maybe concerns somebody like Roki Sasaki if he's taking all these things into account. There's also some concerns from the Padres end with, the overall, the lawsuit that just dropped today with the widow of the late owner who passed away. What was it? 2 years ago. So maybe there is some drama that he doesn't want to be involved with. Maybe there is things that factor into that. But you never know. Amazing coming in with Sasaki. This is the last thing that I do want to touch on here, and then we'll get into the Mets' overall rotation without Roki Sasaki even in there. He's saying that will the Sasaki decision move the starting pitching trade market? It could. It definitely could for teams that are looking at pitching. Maybe the Rangers are a team that pursue pitching if they were not able to get somebody like Roki Sasaki, who they haven't really been in the big mix for, but they are interested. Maybe there is a thought of Dylan Cease getting traded if the Padres aren't able to get him and they just cut costs regardless. You never know. Maybe there's a possibility where the Padres get Roki Sasaki and then Dylan Cease becomes expendable. You don't know, because again, Roki Sasaki would not be making, a major league contract. He's going to be making international pool money, which will be like $7 million, $8 million, something like that. So you just never know what that would look like. But overall, there are some arms out there, frontline arms that probably would be the level of Roki Sasaki's potential that may do get traded afterwards, and that pushes the market. It could happen. I think it's going to be more of a trade deadline thing, personally. I think the Mets might be involved in that at the trade deadline if they were unable to get Roki Sasaki, or maybe they need another piece to replace an injury in a 162-game season. I don't know. Andrew, trade market? I mean, is there a possibility that like sparks it up? There are still quite a few starters on that free agent market still available. So I don't know. A lot of them are in the advanced age. You get your Scherzers, your Verlanders, and your Kershaws. They're available. But, Castillo, Valdez. I mean, is there a possibility that maybe that sparks up and those teams see a package that they like after a team misses out on a Sasaki? Maybe. It's possible. I don't know.
I doubt it. I think for me, the market is moving it. I think Castillo's not going anywhere until Baltimore puts a Heston Kjerstad or a Kobe Mayo on the table, and I don't see them doing that, so I don't think Castillo's getting moved. Framber, they've already said they're not moving Framber now that they move Tucker, so that's not going to happen until, like I said, maybe the deadline. if the Astros get, the little plan blows up back in their face. Maybe a Pablo Lopez, but even that doesn't seem to be a realistic
Yeah.
possibility. Like, I don't think Sasaki choosing because Sasaki's going to the three places that they have a
It's
decent market. The
it's
Padres are
weird
the only.
because when it comes to Sasaki, he's the most cost controllable guy out there. And then the next cost controllable thing is somebody with team control that they could trade for. So I feel like that's kind of the market that Emmy's trying to refer to in that sense. But it's possible, like Zach Gallen, is that a possibility? I don't think they move Zach Gallen. I think they want to pay Zach Gallen, the Diamondbacks. I think that's their thought, and maybe they want to offload somebody like Jordan Montgomery, who they've been very, very public about. I think, again, I understand where it would go from like the overall thought process of this is a cost controllable guy in Roki Sasaki, because he's going to probably, get a multi-year deal, but on a very, very, very team-friendly deal because of the certain circumstance. Teams that are all in for that maybe need pitching in this offseason, could they veer towards another trade? It's possible. Maybe you do see another frontline arm get traded in this offseason, but I don't know if it's going to flood anything like that, if that makes sense. I feel like you're going to, most of the pitcher transactions that you're going to see are definitely going to be off of the free agent market. Brad saying if Roki goes to the Yankees or Dodgers, I will be pissed. I'm not sure if the Yankees are in that conversation. They probably will be, because they definitely have done a good job developing pitching too. But when it comes to the overall situation with all of these teams, there's definitely a good argument for pretty much everyone that has been mentioned, whether you're talking about the Rangers, pitching under Jacob deGrom whenever he's healthy, whether you're talking about the Yankees and their pitching development with what Matt Blake has been able to do, when you're talking about the Mets and, if there is a high opinion of Jeremy Hefner, they also brought in that guy Desi from the Yankees as well, who's really good with pitch design and could definitely bring in a little bit more of a kitchen sink and help Roki Sasaki develop. The Padres have also done okay with pitching recently as well. But you never know what the factor is with the overall thought and learning the organization, which seems like the big factor of Roki Sasaki. I would say if I were to give you a top three, I would go with the Padres, Dodgers, and Mets as the three most likely possibilities. Unless there's a team that just completely swoops in, I think those are the three most likely. Yankees and Rangers maybe on the outside looking in. But again, I have no sources. Like Ken Rosenthal said, we don't know how this is going to play out. And anybody that's saying that this team is the 100% favorite for him, they're probably just trying to push betting odds on FanDuel or something like that. Like, we don't know what is going to be going on, because it seems like, all those other factors that we've seen from a lot of these Japanese players, they're seeming to go out the window in terms of Roki Sasaki. Now, speaking of out the window, and if Roki Sasaki were to sign elsewhere, it's really hard to identify the Mets rotation right now, because I think that when you look at it, it seems like they are trying to create something that not many people see from the outside, from the cold, hard results. And I think that when you look at it from the outside and how you can project this thing well, I do think that there is something that has to be said with the Mets rotation overall and how it projects going forward. Because I feel like a lot of people look at this rotation and they kind of just want to jump off a ledge, and they're like, oh, where are we going to get this all from? Like, David Stearns is cheaping out. David Stearns is only, paying a certain amount of price that other teams are willing to pay. Could that be true? Possibly. But when you look at a rotation such as this, I think that there is a lot of upside here that brings a little bit more fear into a lot of Mets fans because, again, it's more putting your eggs into one basket with, Juan Soto being here. I feel like there is a little bit of a gateway for the young guys, but I'm going to look at this as projective as I can right now. And these are early projections, so I'm not going to go off of this as the full-on Bible of what you're going to see next year. And projections are projections that way based on the results from last year and how they can sort of pan out. But when you look at this Mets rotation, I don't think that there's really much to scoff at when you're like, oh, this is a mediocre rotation, this is awful. It isn't the best rotation, but I feel like the risk is very, very low. And also the kind of look from, kind of the kind of look from upside and how David Stearns has kind of come into mind of an overall summary of this. And I want to show it with a projection from Steamer, which is a projection system on Fangraphs. They also have their own, projections that are very, very dynamic as well throughout the year when things, start to go in different trajectories, which is really, really good. But I do want to the look at the overall of the Mets paying for upside and the overall, I don't want to say bargain, but the overall type of rotation that you're looking at here. The Mets starting rotation of projections via Steamer, there is definitely more of a bargain and more of a projection to where the Mets are a very serviceable rotation without Roki Sasaki. And it sets them up fairly well to make a move at the deadline. Or maybe they do sign Roki Sasaki and we kind of throw this out the window and we're like, okay, maybe we have a little bit more of a chance here. Again, Sasaki has not pitched in the major leagues yet. You never know. But if you're looking at guys like Minaya making $22 million, you go to the overall money per WAR type of, metric that they use on Fangraphs, which is around $8 million per WAR, but last year was about $7.7 million. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it. You're seeing over 1,100 innings from the depth chart. Now, obviously, McGill and Budo most likely will be in the bullpen, which is why that's kind of influctuated. So not really something to count, but they are in that kind of realm of more of that range where they have these starters, but it's going to be tough to stretch them out if you have those types of injuries. It seems like Canning will also start off in the bullpen, and maybe he does get stretched out and could be kind of a swingman. But when you're looking at this overall rotation, you're seeing a lot of sub-4s. You're seeing a lot of, just 4 earned run averages, and collectively together, and the innings they're able to provide of overall volume, I think that you're definitely getting a decent amount of value. If you see that overall salary that the Mets are paying, $85 million for this entire rotation as compared to $85 million for Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer 2 years ago, it's a lot different of a feel. And then the overall projection of money per WAR, or the overall projection of what they'd earn in free agency of overall value, there's about a $10 million increase in that as to where the overall rotation is projected to give you $10 million worth of value as compared to what they are making. Maybe there's a little bit of an overpay for Sean Manaea. Maybe you're looking at it as an overpay for, somebody such as, I don't know, Manaea, it seems like is the only overpay, but he came off of a really good year. But when you look at it from the other point, you have a good, like, I'd say bargain region from guys like Frankie Montas, who, maybe you have a little bit of an overpay in that sense, but it's more of just a 1-year deal as to pitching to that upside of what he would possibly give you. We already know Senga is on one of those, an incredible deal for somebody who could be a frontline arm when he is healthy. $20 million, that is projected for him to be worth on the free agent market for 2025. Again, these are just projections. They're not what is going to happen. Obviously, Clay Holmes getting some really good projections, possibly as a starter. But we also know that he's had success as a reliever too. So maybe that is a bargain as well. Blackburn, if he were to able to give you some innings, maybe. David Peterson, we'll see what we see. More reliever sense from somebody like McGill or Budo. But again, from these projections of the overall starting rotation, these types of projections, you're seeing the overall team ranks, them being plugged in to 2024. This would have ranked the Mets starting rotation 6th in innings pitched, 11th in earned run average, 14th in fielding independent pitching, and 10th in wins above replacement. So when you see those overall rankings with just this overall projection in front of you, with this overall rotation of guys making this type of money, guys that are going into, an upside or a prove it deal, Andrew, you look at these types of ranks. Let's say if you get, fringe into the top 10 in these categories, do you think that sets you up fairly well going to the deadline? Let's say you trade for somebody frontline like Dylan Cease, Luis Castillo, something like that. Do you think that this is a good base? I mean, what do you think about the overall projection of this rotation? Because I feel like, again, this is my feel. I feel like people want to go in here with an overall stacked fantasy team, right? They want to go into the MLB The Show realm of this rotation needs an ace. Surviving to the deadline, I think that this is a really good base. Now, if they were to survive to the deadline like this and not go after a frontline arm, let's say they don't get Roki Sasaki in that way, maybe we'd have a little bit of a different discussion. But as a good base, I personally am okay going into the season with this rotation. That doesn't mean that it's going to be the finished product at the trade deadline. So what are your thoughts about this overall rotation? Do you think it's all bullshit? Do you think that this rotation just stinks and they're all mid and they're all mediocre? What are your thoughts on this? Because I know that you're not a numbers guy. You kind of just go based off of what food the guy eats. So what are your thoughts?
And this is why you throw projections in the fucking garbage. Let's start. Paul Blackburn coming off of surgery. God knows.
This isn't predictions, buddy. This isn't predictions.
Kodai Senga did through 12 innings last year, so we're going to expect him to throw 150. Frankie Montas, who's had a career of getting injured, had a really good year last year. Well, no, Fraser had a solid year. First time in his career, first time in a few years, he stayed healthy. I think it's fine. Again, show him Mania, whatever, bring him Mania back, easing. But again, you're looking at the teams you got to beat. Philly outclasses you. The Dodgers outclass you. The Braves outclass you. So you're already the 4th best rotation going into the season. And God knows what happens with, maybe the Brewers continue to get some upside as a guy like a Jacob Mizorowski. Also, what I don't like is because you haven't gotten stability, you're putting more expectations on your prospects to end Roki Sasaki, if he were to sign, that these guys need to come up right away and step into upper rotation spots. Where, yes, you have Minaya, who had a nice year, made an adjustment, also was a guy who has had injury history in the past, changes his arm slot. We'll see how long he can stay healthy. My thing is, again, you're trying to win a World Series. This ain't a World Series roster. This is you can make the playoffs, maybe, and you're going to have to go via Texas Rangers in 2023, 2 front-end guys at the deadline to even get into the conversation. And yes, this is what David Stearns wants to do, and this is what I hated about David Stearns, is he's going to bring this small market mentality to here. If you're spending $500 million on one player, the checkbook needs to start spending. Would I have rather taken the Montas money plus the Canning money and gotten a better arm? Yeah, I would have done that. Would I have traded prospects for Jesus Luzardo? Yeah, I would have done that. But again, this is the mentality David Stearns wants to bring in this. Let's have 9. And it's a way, if it's good bodies, it works. You still got Tyler McGill, Griffin Canning, who was one of the worst pitchers in baseball last year. You're expecting David Peterson's breakout last year to continue. And then Blackburn, who's coming off a surgery that 95% of us have never heard of. Kodai Senga, who, again, missed all of last year. And yeah, we're turning a closer into a starting pitcher. And we're expected to believe, as fans, that's good enough to compete for a World Series, and that's the end goal. That's my problem with this. Bringing Manaea back was fine. It eased some odds because at least you have somebody you can trust being actually decent. Again, banking on a Montas bounce back. Clay Holmes being a quality at the AAV, a back-end guy because of what the market is. I understand what he wants to do. But if you're, again, you want to say, oh, playing fantasy baseball, yeah, the Phillies are playing fantasy baseball, and they seem to be pretty good every year. The Dodgers play on franchise mode when all the settings turn that off, and they're pretty good. So, again, I understand his method of madness, and I'm okay with it. But, again, you're banking a real thin line in New York of this. Well, it worked last year, so it's going to work every year. That's a real thin line to consistently pump this up. And if it doesn't go right, then you're putting more pressure on a guy like Brandon Sproat to have to come in and be a Paul Skeens-like takeover right away. And Blade Tid will have to fill a spot, and then maybe down the line a McLean and a Tong down the line fill in the spot. That's my problem with it. But again, this is how David Stearns works. He wants to nickel and dime and find value instead of just, now that he has the biggest checkbook, just go out and get the best players. This is what he wants to do. Well, he worked once. Lightning is going to strike twice, so we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Again, when you're in a World Series window, I shouldn't be nickel and diming after giving the biggest. I know he didn't do it because more Cohen, but when your team gives the biggest contract in sports history, nickel and diming, the most volatile and kind of most important to win a championship positions.
Well, here's the thing. I'm talking about this from the view of, let's get this to the deadline. Could this take you do you believe that this could take you to the deadline in playoff position?
Even not really, because again, a lot of injury concern. If the guys are healthy, sure. But again, we're not playing with injuries turned off. There is a lot of injury scares in that rotation. And there's a world where we're entering May and Tyler McGill is your number 3 starter. Because, Clay Holmes doesn't work. He has to go back to the rotation. Kodai Senga gets hurt again. Montas gets hurt again. And now you're going to McGill as your 4 and 5.
Yeah, I feel like this is again, no. but this injury stuff, I feel like this is continuously the same issue, the same concern that you have with every single pitcher in the major leagues. If there is some kind of incredible have to get pitcher out there that you would throw $200 million at, lead him to me. And I would talk about him. But again,
the guy that has 4 straight years of throwing 200 innings that signed a less than expected deal out of the year 2 opt out. Yeah, I wish there was one of those guys that signed this offseason. But no, we got Frankie Montas.
Yeah, but again, that's still better upside compared to something like Corbin Burns that investing that type of money into him, there's a possibility that he breaks. Again, this is the type of philosophy that he does have. And I like this philosophy because it puts you in a position to know what you need at the trade deadline, to know what you need at certain points. The overall quantity approach is something that can help you through 162 games. I'm not talking about the playoffs. And to be honest, if this was the rotation that you're looking at going into the playoffs, you probably would have somewhat of a concern. But I do think that there is going to be pieces that maybe they do take a little bit of a flyer on that end up working out. Maybe it's Montas, maybe it's Holmes, maybe it's Griffin Canning. Maybe that does end up happening for overall stability in the rotation. But I think this also sets up the possibility of, and I think everybody is pretty much all agreeing, which is what I was expecting in this poll. So for those of you who have not voted on the poll, please do. As usual, we have about almost 100 votes on it. But when it comes to the overall look of the rotation, if they were to have a rotation that is middle of the pack going into the trade deadline, and then they go into the trade deadline as trying to get a frontline starter in that regard, and looking that way with the assets that they do have that could be expendable. You never know. I think this is the best way to do it than just overpaying and giving massive deals to pitchers who, no matter what, like you just said, all of these injury concerns, but less risk overall in money. If you're telling me that getting Corbin Burnes, getting Blake Snell, getting all of these other guys on the market, and you have no injury concern whatsoever, you're insane. You're completely insane. You want to rebuttal that in any way? I'm sorry. You have this concern with every pitcher imaginable. Every single pitcher has gone down with an injury. And that's the main reason as to why. What?
Yeah, but again, I got a guy who was on the market for 4 straight seasons, has thrown 200 innings.
That still works against him, though.
That
still works against him, though.
Not really. Again, when you have a guy, and again, this wasn't
800 innings in the last 4 seasons with mileage on your arm, with his strikeout percentage going down.
And guess what? He still would still be a top 30 pitcher in the game. Oh, you're not getting the number one anymore? Okay.
And you're going to get
a top 30 game.
And you're going to give almost $200 million or over $200 million to a guy just to be top 30.
In baseball? Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll take a top 30 arm in the game.
And you're telling me that Sean Manaea at that cost isn't top 30?
No.
Okay.
Not even top 50. No. A 4 ERA is not top 30. No. Again, you want to build this.
Did he have a 4 ERA last year?
Yes, he did. He had a high 3.6, 4 ERA, round up. Ain't that impressive?
What did he do when he changed that arm slot? What was he?
And what did he do in the biggest game of the year? He flopped.
He came through. He came through for us in the postseason.
In Game 6? No, he didn't.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sure that the Dodgers scoring 10 runs a game also.
Exactly. And again, and we're going to go with the same mentality of not getting actually good pitchers against the Dodgers lineup. Let's throw a Frankie Montas against the Dodgers. Let's throw Sean Manaea again versus the Dodgers.
But Sean Manaea was good against the Dodgers. Again, he was able to shut them down.
Not in Game 6.
He was able to shut them down. He was limiting damage no matter what. He wasn't able to get the ball over the plate in Game 6. It had nothing to do with the overall damage to him. He shut down Shohei Ohtani in Game 2.
And then what happened? Tommy Edman homers off him in Game 6. I don't care. Again, you need to beat that lineup. I'm sorry. Nobody in that rotation right now is beating the Dodgers rotation. Sorry. And I don't care. You want to go give up everybody the prospects? Do it now. Why are you doing it again? And we've seen what the trade deadline market is. It's going to skyrocket if it's again like last year. Get the guys now so you go into the season so you don't have to overpay at the deadline.
I think keeping everything optional going into the season is a lot better than putting all of your chips in for a starting pitcher that could possibly get hurt. Like you said, is the exact same concern you have with everybody in this rotation. It's a better way to do it, in my opinion.
So again, we'll play the game. Who has a better year, Corbin Burnes or any of these bums in our rotation?
I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit what he does.
Hell, I would have even taken Nathan Eovaldi over all these bums in our rotation. I would have taken a Nathan Eovaldi too, but I'm saying that when you're forming up this entire rotation, right, it's better to go with upside, possibly take lightning in a bottle, possibly get lightning in a bottle. Look at this. Look at the overall upside in this rotation, and see what you can get from it, and understand what position you are at the trade deadline. It's better to do something like that. This isn't fantasy baseball. No, they go out and get studs. The Phillies have.
Well, guess what? The Dodgers have resources to do that.
No, wait. Oh, yeah. So you're telling me the Mets don't have the richest owner in baseball and a ton of prospects they can trade? Oh, no, we got plenty of resources.
The Mets don't have those resources
Yeah, they do.
to do that.
Yeah, they do.
Again, if you believe that teams are just lining up to take the Mets prospects, I don't know what to tell you. You have one prospect that's worth a damn, all right, at any trade value, and that being Brandon Sproat. Brandon Sproat ain't going anywhere. So, again, there's no reason, I can tell you right now, when you're looking at the overall rotation, there's no reason that David Stearns is just being lazy. David Stearns is just sleeping in that regard. He is just not making any of these trades because all these other pieces, it's because no one wants our prospects. No one wants them. Our farm system isn't that good.
No,
our farm system is middle of the pack. Now, for those of you in the chat that voted on this poll, I asked you guys what you would rank the Mets starting rotation among all 30 teams. 70% of you are putting it in the top 10. 57% of you are putting it in the middle 10, which is what I was expecting you guys to do. And 17% of you are putting it in the bottom 10. 9% of you are undecided, which, again, you'll see what happens again. There's another factor that goes into this. The Mets, Rosie coming in here saying that the Mets better strengthen the lineup to make for that rotation. And that's what we have seen on the free agent market. It's not that they're not doing anything because nothing has happened. It's because they're looking at the market. Again, I'm not completely rushing them in this way to upgrade the lineup because they're definitely keeping all options open. Rosie also saying the concern is how many runs this rotation is going to give up per game. I think you're going to be surprised. I think you're going to be surprised. I think you're going to win games 10-9 more of 2 to 3 run ball than 4 to 5 run ball.
Are we talking the Phillies rotation or the Mets rotation? Because that's more Philly rotation, not a fucking shot.
And you scoffed at Severino Manaea last year, and look
again,
at that.
Lightning don't strike twice. Whoop-de-doo, you got it once. Lightning ain't gonna strike twice.
It does when you have David Stearns at the helm.
Nah, doubt that. Again,
it's not just lucking into things. It's not just lucking into things. It has really nothing to do with luck. It's just the overall of how they can develop these arms and how they can make them better. If you don't trust David Stearns to do that if you don't trust David Stearns to do that already, I don't know what to tell you.
Or I trust David
every
Stearns.
Single year you're going to see a pitcher that he brings in
actual good pitchers and make them better.
Oh no, this guy stinks, and then he's going to end up being good. And then you're like, oh, we got to bring this guy back. He's one of the best in the game because he had a good ERA last year.
Yeah, because I was clamoring for Severino and Manaea.
I bet you out of Montas, Canning, Clay Holmes, 2 of them are going to be quality starters this year.
No,
Put that in the bank.
No, I think maybe you get Montas as a 5. Clay Holmes because Clay Holmes was so good for the Yankees.
What do you know about Montas? Is it because of what he's done throughout his entire career?
Yes, because he's actually at least
because of what he's done, but throughout his entire career. Yeah. Is that why? Is that why? Because he's been shit. He's been so bad. He's been so average throughout his entire career. Guess what? His entire career goes out the window once he comes here under David Stearns.
No. Again, can we actually get good pitchers and make them great? Can we stop making garbage average?
You can believe whatever you want to believe. I remember you victory lapping me after Severino gave up 6 runs in his first ever start as a Met. I remember you doing that to me.
Yeah.
And guess what? He turned out a really good year. Sean Manaea, another guy, it was like, oh, he's garbage. I'm pretty sure somebody in our comment section, I remember, saying he's a turd. They brought him back on a big contract because he did have a really good year last year. So again, upside is there. It's not like they're bringing in a guy who we've seen the best of. Let's say they're bringing in someone who's completely peaked. Charlie Morton, for an example. Somebody like that. It's not like that. These guys are coming into their 30s, just entered their 30s, and that's pretty much where you catch the prime of their career, and you can get the best value out of them. I think a lot of people are turning heads on this rotation. Maybe they'll feel a little bit better if they get Roki Sasaki. Roki Sasaki is another question mark. Again, you never know. But I think that you're definitely going to be surprised from this rotation. You're going to get a little bit more than you expect from this rotation. And then you're going to look back at this conversation that we had on January 6th, 2025 at 9:30 Eastern time. You're going to look at this rotation and you're going to say, Carson, I was wrong. They were pretty good. You're going to look at that at the end of the year and you're going to be fine. You're going to be like, okay, they're a lot better. They were a lot better from my expectation. And they're going to put themselves in a position where all they need is maybe a frontline piece, another add to this rotation for a playoff run. You're all going to say
and when
that.
we're at end of
You're gonna
May
say
and
that.
Clay Holmes is back in the bullpen, Griffin Canning is DFA'd, and Frankie Montas is pitching like a 5, we're going to be like, well, we need 4 starters at the deadline.
No. See, Rosie, a good debate is when both people make good points. I'm the only one making good points here. So
No, because I'm not sucking off a guy that hasn't won a championship. I'd like a big market GM and stop nickel and diming some starting pitching.
Has Corbin Burns won a championship?
Hey,
yeah.
But you know what? He showed up.
Yeah. Suck on it. Yeah.
You know what? And who's going to probably have a better playoff chance?
Beanie Carson is a problem,
Zach Gallen and again, I forgot about the Diamondbacks rotation is better than ours too, because they actually have 2 aces. And then they
look at the Diamondbacks rotation last year.
Yeah,
they were great.
And we screwed them out of a playoff spot.
Remember all those those incredible additions that they made last year, the E-Rods and the Jordan Montgomery and then I told you guys that rotation was mediocre. Remember when I said that? And they were awful last year. They weren't good. And that was the reason why they didn't go to the playoffs. Oh, well, just because it looks good on paper doesn't mean it's going to be fantastic. You never know. Listen,
and just because the nerds think they're good don't mean they're
it's
real.
Good. I think it's good. I think it's a good point to have concerns about this rotation, but I think it's also a good point to let it marinate to the trade deadline. Because again, that quantity over quality in a 162-game season, you need arms. And it's not just going to be, this guy looked purty. This guy looked great. He got a good ERA. That's not what wins games. That isn't what wins games. That's not what creates wins. Results don't create wins. Again, results are not the one thing to look at. That sounded wrong.
Yeah, that was fucking
results
awful.
Are not the
great
thing.
What the fuck?
Results are not
about.
The correct thing to look at when you're trying to create wins in the future. That's the best way to look at it. Again, projections, I'm looking at it from the window of how it's being projected. We don't think, and I don't think, that all of these stat lines are going to be what it is. This is not going to be the main thing that you see from the Mets rotation. But I'm just saying that the overall thought process of possible upside projecting going forward from this rotation, it's looked at as a cost type of steal, if you want to say that, or a cost type of
cutting costs in a big market. Yeah, it's always great small market mentality.
It's not going to. I'm telling you, it really is not worth it to spend that type of money on starting pitching anymore. It really isn't.
Again, or trade for Jesus Luzardo. You couldn't do that.
If
God
you want to,
okay. Good, you know.
Look at all of the frontline pitchers from last year. Okay, look at all the frontline pitchers from last year, and tell me how those teams ended up doing. Right? Let's see. We had last year Jordan Montgomery. He was one of the main reasons why they missed the playoffs. We had Blake Snell going to the Giants. Giants did fantastic. Who else was on that market? We had Nathan Eovaldi. He was available. Texas did great. All those guys on that free agent market, it's not the end all be all. If you were to look at this Mets rotation and you were to get somewhat quality, because again, I think also people forget that Kodai Senga, he's a frontline arm. When he's healthy, he needs to be healthy, of course. But again, that's a factor you have with every single pitcher. And it's all really of who's going to be injured less. I can guarantee you that you're going to look back on this episode, on this debate, and you are going to get a lot more than you expect from this type of rotation at default. We'll see what happens with this Sasaki. Maybe this becomes completely irrelevant in 2 weeks. Maybe the Mets get Roki Sasaki. But at the trade deadline, looking back at the trade deadline, you're going to look at this rotation and say, we were able to build up quality with quantity. And that, I feel like, is the best way to set it up. Again, making these types of trades for these starting pitchers, it's because nobody wants your prospects. Nobody wants them. Nobody does. Especially the positional prospects. I can do a full breakdown of that. Whew, they stink. They stink. I'm going to tell you right now. They may look great from the orange and blue goggles, but boy, whoo, our prospects are not good. They're really not that good. They may be better than what they were 2 years ago. They're not that good, and they're not that appealing to other teams. So that's kind of how I look at it from overall the starting pitching. Again, we can go into that free agent market last year of 2024. All of those teams that went all in for the frontline starting pitching. We can go into, let's say, 2023 to 2024 and where they all ended up. Tell me one team that signed a frontline guy where they really, really needed it and they were able to go to the playoffs.
I mean, again,
Please
the
tell
best
me.
one, I think the Dodgers signed the best front end guy. I think they did pretty good.
Yeah,
they signed the best
totally
guy.
needed him.
Well, they needed him because, like you said, every pitcher's
And
injured,
what
so they needed
happened and what happened for majority of that year? Oh yeah, Yamamoto.
And they won the
Oh
World
yeah,
Series.
Yamamoto. He got
They won
hurt.
the World Series. And guess who was
Yeah,
good?
they won the World Series because they had Shohei and Betts and Freeman.
Oh, now the offenses matter. Oh, now we're having an offensive discussion. Oh, now it's offense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, you could have an offensive discussion regarding this team, right? Because didn't you just sign Juan Soto?
Yeah, and you're still not gonna. And he's gonna have to score 9 runs a game with the pitchers giving up 8.
All right, so let's see. Last year, the overall free agents from last year, the starting pitching, the frontline guys that everyone had to get because the Mets rotation looks like crap. All right, let me do that for you. Okay, Shohei Ohtani, right?
Couldn't even get an offer
last year.
Couldn't even get an offer.
Didn't even pitch last year. Would you get I mean, Aaron Nola was out there, right?
Yeah, he's pretty good.
He pitched great for a 7-year deal. Blake Snell, those Giants did really, really well last year.
It's not the point of the team. It's about the pitcher. Look at the fucking names in his rotation.
But this is the concern. But this is the concern with the team everyone has. They said, we're going to lose because of this starting pitching because our fantasy team doesn't look great. Okay. Sonny Gray signing a 3-year deal with St. Louis. What happened with St. Louis last year?
And again, he pitched solid.
How did St. Louis do? How did St. Louis do?
And that's not Sonny Gray's fault. He pitched well. The rest of the team sucked. Who cares? That's not Sonny Gray's fault.
But the starting rotation is the reason why this team sucks, right?
Yeah. And
so which is it? The team sucks because of the starting rotation, and you have to get these guys to make it better, or these guys not coming here, it's because of the other team around them. So which one is it? Which one is it?
Are the Mets rotation better than the Phillies? No. Are they better than the Braves? No. So they're already the third in their own division.
All right.
Are they better than the Dodgers? Are they better than Swellenbach and Schreider?
The Braves lost Morton and Fried.
Who cares? Fried's
all right.
Swellenbach's better than anything they got. And then
let's see.
The Dodgers. So you have the
Clayton Kershaw was hurt all year last year. Brandon Woodruff was hurt last year. Again, another signing from Kyle Gibson with St. Louis. They did not make the playoffs. Marcus Stroman wasn't even on their postseason roster for the Yankees. There was Julio Urias out there with all that baggage. Would you sign him?
He's got more upside than everybody.
The rotation was not good with Arizona. I'd say that the bargain deal of, let's say, Seth Lugo last year, that was pretty good for Kansas City. That worked out pretty good. Michael Wacha, 1-year deal with the Kansas City Royals. That worked out pretty well, and he got another contract. Let's see. These other guys that got their big deals. Yoshinobu Yamamoto was hurt for a majority of the season, which is another thing of the injury concern with Frankie Montas and all these other guys. But you know, again, injury history doesn't matter for Yoshinobu Yamamoto because they won the World Series even though without his efforts for the entirety of the season. Even though that's me proving my point of these guys, you need
and showed up in the postseason when they needed him most. So that's all I care about. You show up in the biggest moment, which you did.
Yeah, well, again, still not a great thought process for forming a rotation in the offseason.
No.
Again, would you sign Chris Carpenter for the incredible postseason that he had?
I mean,
would
hell,
you sign Steven Strasburg for the incredible postseason that he had?
I need a guy I could trust when I need the postseason. I don't care about
the regular season. Would you like to sign Steven Strasburg right now?
I mean, technically, we could trade for him.
And why wouldn't you want to sign Steven Strasburg right now? Could it be that he was injured ever since he signed that contract, even though he was at the top of his game at that current moment when he signed it? Nope. Again, all of these debates that you're putting out here are the concerns that you face as well with these front line guys, and they never seem to be a big factor that seems to be the game changer in your rotation to compete with other teams. So these frontline guys that these teams substantially open the wallet for, because Daddy's Warbucks Steve should be opening the wallet for them, because we need to play fantasy baseball.
Because, again, you need to beat super team rotations and super team lineups. You cannot tell me Frankie Montas and Clay Holmes are going to shut down a Dodger lineup or a Philly lineup.
Okay, let me swing this the other way. Tell me the Dodgers rotation, who's their number one in their rotation? Blake Snell?
Take a pick. Blake Snell, Tyler Glasnow, now Shohei Ohtani, Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Take your damn pick.
Why am I not concerned about facing Tyler Glasnow?
Because you're dumb.
Is there a reason why I'm not concerned? I love Tyler Glasnow. I think he's very, 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 very talented. But what is always the problem with him? What's always the problem with him? He can't stay on the field. He can't stay on the field. Again, who's the best investment? Who's the best upside? That's the best way to look at it. From pitching, you also just need to develop your own arms. That's another thought. But when it comes to the overall with the Dodgers, even though we said this earlier, catching you in a lie once again, the starters, they haven't been able to stay healthy. Is that just not an argument anymore?
Because and then they do that and they add Series? 7 aces. They say, you know what? Let's not shop in the bargain. No, let's just go we're going to get Sasaki. Let's go bring in Glasnow when we have it. Let's go bring in more actually good
the resources
talent.
To do that, I'm sure they do the same thing, but they don't. They don't have the resources to do it.
Being cheap. That's why spend and just keep spending. It don't matter. It's not my money. Don't care. Keep spending until you get it. That's how you have to win. Yeah, if you're saying the prospects suck, then cash is the only thing you got.
Position to spend big on. Not a smart position to spend big on.
And when we fall short again in October because we don't have an actual good rotation, don't want to hear anything.
Well,
don't want to hear a damn
one thing, again, like I said, there's another part to this point. What if they were to deal for a frontline arm at the trade deadline?
One's not enough. You need two. You need multiple. You need guys that you can feel confident starting a playoff series. It's a healthy Senga, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And if Minaya can keep it going, if that. 2. You need 3 to 4. So you need 2 more guys that you can trust, unless you're trusting David Peterson's breakout.
And you're telling me out of Montas, Holmes, and Canning, none of them will be good enough to start a playoff game at all.
If you're trying to be a serious contender, no. If you're trying to be the Milwaukee Brewers,
history, with the well-known history of what David Stearns has been able to do with pitchers, one of those 3 is not going to pan out to be your 4th starter in your playoff rotation.
That'd be Brandon Sproat out of anybody, but that's not a conversation. It would be Sproat because he actually is talented.
Opening the gate for him as well. Opening the gate as well for Brandon Sproat. Again, keeping the options open, keeping it pivotal. That's just the best way to do it with this pitching. Not just spending 8 or 6 years on Corbin Burns going into his 30s. It's just stupid to me. Anyways, He keeps bringing up the Phillies. Did we lose to the Phillies in the playoffs?
Oh God, and this is one day. Oh, because we beat them one time in the postseason. We're gonna beat them every year.
Oh, wait,
and
but
then
the
what
Dodgers
and
won
then
the
they
World
get
Series.
better.
That doesn't
but
matter.
Here's the thing. But then here's
Oh,
the thing. They
now
actually
the results
got
don't
better.
matter, folks. Oh, no. He better be Spider-Man because he getting caught in a bunch of web of lies.
And again, I would still take the Phillies over this team right now. And they're still going to win the division.
We were able to destroy them.
Again,
we were
one
able to
year
destroy them.
with their bullpen imploding again. Well, again, I will gladly take the Phillies.
But the results are the only thing that matters. Results are the only thing that matters.
You know what?
Because again, the ERA of Clay Holmes last year and the ERA of Frankie Montas, that is the only thing that matters.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that matters. But no, the results don't matter again because now we're bringing up the Phillies. Those results don't matter because, again, we're just going to be going off of double standards again. And, it all is about,
did you beat the Dodgers?
My narrative because we need to spend Daddy Warbucks money
yes.
in every single possible
because I'd
direction.
like to beat the Dodgers. You can beat the Phillies, sure. I want to win a World Series. You're not getting through the Dodgers with Frankie Montas and Clay Holmes in your rotation.
All right, let me raise you one. Again, you cut me off here.
Oh, like you haven't done 4 times tonight?
Blake Snell, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Tyler Glasnow, who knows if he's going to be healthy for that. Who else is in that rotation?
Oh, yeah, Shohei Ohtani's back this year. Add him.
Shohei Ohtani. Okay.
We'll see if
add
Dustin May and
Gonsolin
and Kershaw.
That rotation. How could we get through that rotation? Didn't we just sign one of the best hitters of this generation in Juan Soto to even out that type of matchup? Could it be that maybe this could be more of an offensive heavy team? Maybe is it possible that we're looking at bringing back Pete Alonso, another hitter there as well? Also have some bullpen stuff, make it a little bit more lockdown. Is it possible that maybe we have Edwin Diaz at the back of the end of the bullpen, who is the greatest reliever we've ever seen? Could it be possible? No, it's because our fantasy team doesn't look great. Oh, well, fantasy baseball, we're going to lose.
Brett Beatty is Brett Beatty's our current opening day third base. You get that shit back.
I'm sorry. Is the offseason over? Didn't think so. One last question coming in here, and then we will wrap this one off. That was a good debate, man. That was good. I completely floored you. But anyways, MPC coming in saying the question, who's signing Bregman? That moves the Pete signing quicker, I think. I don't know who signs first, to be honest. I don't know. Who do you think does sign first, Pete or Bregman? I don't know.
Bregman, because he actually has a market. There's actual teams involved with Bregman.
Does he, though?
Red Sox, Tigers, maybe Seattle. Well, not Seattle. But at least he has a market. Alonso has no market. So the fact that a Bregman has a market and at least teams that have actual interest.
But are you thinking, I mean, again, are you really considering the Red Sox and the Tigers an actual market?
We're counting the Mets as a market for Alonso, so 2 is greater than 1. So yeah. Again, we have proven sources say
but
Tigers,
you have the same
Red
amount
Sox.
of weight of non-market because you're looking at Angels and all these teams that have no sense of direction. So it's again, I don't know. I don't know who would sign first, but since they're both Boris clients, they probably go by the same. There's probably the same rhythm from there. I could see it being Bregman. I think that Detroit is the biggest possibility. I think that the talks of Mets and Bregman have died down. I'm glad they have because I do not want Alex Bregman. I think both of them will be factored by each of each other, because you also have the factor of the Mets being the team that is looking to retain Pete Alonso. And there's also the thought of Vientos going to first if they do not get Pete Alonso. So the first and third type of market, I think, is the best way to move it along. The dominoes are going to fall probably back to back with both of them. Maybe they're a day apart or something. I would say if I had to take a guess, Andrew, I'll let you take a guess as well. If I had to guess, with that market of the Red Sox and the Tigers, and then there's the Mets there, there's the Giants there, there's the Angels there. Maybe the Blue Jays throw money there. I think that if I were to make a bet, if I were a betting man, I would say Bregman goes to Detroit, Nolan Arenado gets traded to Boston, and then Pete ends up coming back to the Mets. That's what I think that is the best possibility of what happens. And then maybe whatever is left out there, maybe Toronto just throws money at it. Like, that's how I kind of look at it. Because, again, is it possible that, they were willing to throw that money at Corbin Burns? I'm sure they were. We also had the Red Sox in that talk. So I think that the best way that the market moves is definitely going to be with the first dominoes of Bregman and Pete. But I do just think it's only a matter of time before you get that announcement. Maybe you do. Who knows? But what are your thoughts, Andrew? If you're looking at the market, would you agree with me? Bregman to Detroit, Nolan Arenado gets traded to Boston, and then Pete comes back to the Mets with his tail between his legs.
I think Bregman probably ends up. I'm going to go Boston for Bregman. Arenado's not moved. Alonso can come back to the Mets. And Toronto throws money, like you said, at somebody who's just a living beating at Santander or whatever. Yeah. I don't think Arenado's getting moved. I think the more and more Katie keeps talking and what the Cardinal source is saying, if he said no to Houston, I don't think he's wanting. He wants the Dodgers because, again, he's a smart man. He wants to go to a team that wants to win a World Series. The Yankees don't seem to be in there, so that takes them out. We're not in. So it's really, is he going to really want to go to a mid-team like, again, Boston or Detroit maybe? But again, I think Arenado's not moved at all. If he does get moved, it might be in spring training. I don't think he's going to get moved before pitchers and catchers report. So I would think then Boston gets aggressive, moves, signs Bregman. Detroit ends up making a move for maybe a Yandy Diaz. That maybe is a situation for Detroit. And then Toronto throws again $170 million at Anthony Santander. And then Tub Polar Bear can come back again, like if it's a 4-year deal, a Bellinger type deal. I think that's how the rest of the offseason goes. And then the relievers are the relievers. I mean, think of every good team, Tanner Scott, the Philly, and then, figure out Jeff Hoffman and the Steves and all the other top end guys on the market.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how it all pans out because it has been going at a little bit of a slow pace, but waiting for those big dominoes to fall. I think the top free agents right now on the market, it's probably Bregman, Alonso, Santander. Like, that's the top right now. Is there anybody else available that I'm missing?
I mean, again, unless you count the Profar and his WAR, but about it, I would say those are the big three left.
Profar in the WAR. I mean, we already discussed Profar today, so for those of you who have not seen that, make sure to rewind, and we'll talk a little bit about. We talked a little bit about how Jurickson Profar fits in, but we are going to end this one off here. For those of you in the chat, for those of you who came in here and stayed for the whole show, for those of you who came in here and watched a little bit of it, for those of you watching on playback, we hope you enjoyed the conversation. Thank you guys so much for watching, listening, and for on playback. If you want to join the conversation live in the future, make sure to subscribe to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel and turn on post notifications to not miss when we do go live, which is regularly Monday at 7 o'clock. We went live at 7:30 because, stuff happens. We had to delay it a little bit, but regularly it is Monday at 7. We also have some content that we like to put out throughout the week as well to keep the conversation going. We also do go live for any breaking news. So let's say if Pete Alonso signs or they make some kind of trade that is a major league level type of addition, we will go live for that, give you our instant reactions, and then maybe a full-on breakdown in the next podcast. Make sure to follow us on X and on TikTok. Follow all of us individually, including our third co-host, who is not here today, in Frank About Sports. He'll be back next week. Guys, don't worry. Frank has not left us completely. He is just not available for today, and he will be back next week. And, of course, with this offseason going as slow as it is, be patient. Things will happen. Shoes are going to drop. The other shoe is going to drop. The market is going to pan out. You just got to be a little bit patient because that's just how the MLB offseason is as compared to other leagues where it's a little bit quicker and you know where everyone is going maybe day one or week one of free agency, but that's just not how baseball rolls. So we'll see. We will pay attention to the reports of what happens, and we'll see. For those of you in here, thank you guys so much for watching. Give a shout out to a few of you guys. Aaron, thank you for watching. Tommy Nunez as well. M. Easy, of course, one of our loyal viewers. Jay-Z, thank you for tuning in. Richard Zucker, bringing in his opinions as well. Thank you for watching. Marcus as well. Daniel Berry Sports Highlights, who's usually in here as well. Anybody else here? Explosive, of course. Kenneth Flood. Philip Moreno, our guy Subway to Shea, who came in here earlier and tuned in. And, as for everybody else, of course, our guy Ibby here, who was trolling me with Jeff McNeil, because everybody wants to troll me with Jeff McNeil, even the Mets as an organization. But anyways, we will see you guys next time. Let's go Mets. Peace out. Be patient. The moves will come. Don't worry.